Hey guys, what's up? Noam here, coming to you today with another important topic, all about workaholism, working for work's sake, and overworking for no reason. I'm going to try and do this without as many notes. I'm still getting used to doing videos, so you're going to have to be a bit patient with me. But for me, I think it's more important when I'm in a certain mindset, I've got something in my mind just to get it out so all the thoughts go out, as opposed to it being perfect. Perfectionism is another thing I'll talk about some other time. So if I was doing a 12-step program, I would probably stand up and say, my name is Noam and I'm a workaholic, because it's something I really have issues with, and I know it's something that affects millions of people. Everyone is these days kind of just stressed out and anxious and thinking that they have to keep on top of all this stuff because we have so much distraction and so much technology kind of trying to grab us, all these apps and things for productivity, that we're just becoming like bundles of stress. Even though we have more stuff available to us, so again, more apps, Wi-Fi is everywhere, travel is easier than ever, all the stress, anxiety, and depression disorders are on the rise. And you kind of wonder, why is that? Like, what's going on? And the reason why I'm thinking about this right now is I just kind of burnt out again. I had a week where I just really couldn't do anything. I felt like shit. And my friend Phil, I'll link his site down below. It's a pretty cool site called The Introverted Man. But he's been in business for himself for 7 years, so he's gone through a lot of the initial kind of grinds and startups with starting a business. Because when you start out, you're really, really hustling. You have to work pretty hard. But he was saying how he notices how these business owners, well, they're so invested in their work and the work becomes their identity that they really can't separate from it. So they have problems actually living their life outside and taking breaks and investing in their hobbies, putting those strong boundaries in place so they actually live their lives until it's either too late or until they have kids and when they're kind of more forced to take off time. So it really got me thinking, because I've dealt with burnout all the time, more so than I'd like to. Obviously, I would like to never burn out. But it's really made me think about, even though I'm really grinding hard and trying to start businesses and all that, is it really worth the stress as opposed to it taking a bit longer and all that type of stuff? So what exactly is work for work, or W4W, and workaholism? So work for work's sake is a term from Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek. And pretty much it means you're doing work just to fill time or just so you feel productive. It doesn't actually mean it's productive. So it's things like checking email 500 times a day when you really could just check it twice, batch it, and you get the same result, but you feel like you need to. You feel like you're like a rat with a cocaine pellet dispenser trying to get that hit of dopamine for getting like a new email just because you're expecting something good. It's checking work 5 times when you can check it once and it's it's good enough. Trying to find like the best solution where you have something that's 80% good and it's good enough. Stuff like that. You're just creating work for your own work's sake, trying to make something perfect when stuff is good enough and it's working. And workaholism is just kind of an extension of that. It's like your identity is so invested in work that you have a hard time separating from work. So it's like you have problems living a life outside of work, and your life is your work. Now, there's kind of like a lot of this stuff is a gray area, because as a lot of people say, your work should become a passion of yours. You should really love what you're doing, which is true, but work won't fill a void where things like relationships with your family and pursuing your hobbies will ever come into place. Like, they just can't. It's totally different. But again, it's a gray area, so it's not like a black and white sort of thing. For me personally, all this started because I saw my dad. He worked really hard when I was growing up, and he still works hard. And I'm really glad I got his work ethic, because I'm at least not a lazy asshole. Like I'm willing to work for what I get. But unfortunately, just working is not the end or the means to the end of life. And going through engineering, I was just studying, and I missed out on a lot of stuff in college or university because of it. I still got to have some fun, don't get me wrong, but there was a lot I missed out on. And a lot of times we do things like this, so we overinvest in work. And you should ask yourself this, because we're afraid of doing the other stuff. So the past few days I've been taking it pretty easy. I'm still doing work, obviously, but I'm doing a lot less. And I'm finding either during the blank time, I'm trying to fill it with bullshit, or I feel kind of nervous, like I should be doing something. So it's very hard for me to sit still. And it's not like how to describe this, but that's actually a bad thing. That's something wrong internally in my head, because there's nothing wrong with sitting still and being okay. It's like, as long as you're getting your work done, as long as you're hitting deadlines and you're making enough money to live, or over to live, sorry, then you're good. But obviously, if you're sitting around and you have stuff to do, then that's a problem. But yeah, it's weird because it seems like a lot of times we feel guilty for not working and filling more of our time. So there's a Headspace animation that I'll also link down below that talks about how there's this cultural sort of perspective that says we put in more effort, or the more effort we put in, the more we get out of stuff. But that's not necessarily always the case. So just because, again, you check something 5 times over, it doesn't mean that you're going to get a better end product. You'll get more stressed out and you'll spend more time, but maybe once over, going over that is good enough. Or, for example, if you've found, this is a business example, but you found a system that really works for, let's say, making email series. So, those email funnels that happen. If you know a real structure that works for 85% of cases and you can replicate it for everything, is there really a point to manually writing the emails all the time, or can you just reuse the same system over and over again? So sometimes I feel like I personally deal with this, and I know other people have said this, but they feel guilty for being quote-unquote lazy, even though they're doing getting the same result with way less work and still getting things to happen, like everything works. But they feel guilty, and usually it comes back to the question, like, really asking yourself, why were you put here on this earth? Do you think you were put here just to work, just to grind at a desk all the time, and that's it, that's all life is? So the parts about making beautiful friendships, relationships, romantic or otherwise, traveling, seeing new things, trying new things, all the hours in the day, the 24, or let's say 16 if you're sleeping 8, is that supposed to be filled with just staring at a screen? Or is there other stuff you could be doing? Of course, again, for me, I still have blank times where I'm just staring at YouTube, but at least I'm doing something else other than just grinding away at my work. So think about that question too. And I think this is why, Tim Ferriss's book just really flipped off and was really popular, because more and more people are asking themselves, is my life really just, I wake up at X time, I go on the same freaking commute all the time, then I go to work 9 to 5, I'm filled with bullshit meetings that are just worthless, I have to deal with HR, and then I have this work that really doesn't mean anything to me. There's this huge disconnect, and I think a cultural shift that's happening, and it's going to really rock the world in the next couple of years or couple of decades, in terms of, again, I think people going more remote, 9 to 5, that sort of cultural thing becoming questioned. And same with, college education. That's all going to be questioned, I think. But I think this is why people are really into this 4-hour work week, live on the beach lifestyle. Of course, I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole other thing about salesmanship and all that. But going back to more about this productivity stuff. So once you get into this 4-hour work week stuff and, work for work's sake and all that, you learn about things like Pomodoro's Pareto principle, Parkinson's law. So things like, 20% of your inputs give you 80% of the outputs. And you can say that with, different clients that you have, or just getting templates or systems that work, so on and so forth. But the dirty trick is, for anyone who's a workaholic, they're going to say, oh, now I have a way of doing more, so I can just cram in more work in that time, right? And so it just becomes a never-ending cycle, because first you were trying to become more efficient at doing, good things and getting it done shorter so you can go live your life. But now you're like, well, I have more time, so why don't I fill it with more work, right? And just get more done so I can run more quickly. And again, it's just a never-ending cycle that won't end. And I think this is especially a problem, again, with entrepreneurs and people who are trying to do a startup, and even more so with exit strategy-based startup owners. So these are people who want to build up a company into where it's worth millions and then sell that company. For someone who's like me, who's more of a freelancer or a consultant and is looking to build a business that is kind of more lifestyle-based, so I'm not really thinking of selling a business that I'm working on. I'm looking to build these up and then have them kind of support me for the rest of my life. It's kind of a different story because there's always more I can do. But for an exit strategy startup founder, I feel like the Silicon Valley thing is pushed where you're working like 20-hour days, you're getting 4 hours of sleep, and then it's like worn as a badge of honor. So again, I know that was a lot of stuff, and there wasn't anything really conclusive about that. But I would just ask you to think, about your life, because this is really important stuff, and I can't answer this question right away because I've been trying to think about it, and I always get caught up in working more and more for no reason. And again, the other thing is sometimes you will use work. And I think I mentioned this, but you'll use work to invest in that instead of doing the stuff that makes you a bit anxious, but it's more important. So for me, even though I'm an introvert and I love my alone time, I obviously like socializing with people too. But because of my social anxiety, I sometimes use work as a means to not socialize, not like go on dates with girls, not do stuff that's scary for me. So like new hobbies and things like that. I'll use work or having an excuse of doing work or being tired from work, stuff like that, as a problem. So some signs that, workaholism is really kind of affecting you. For me, after a day, for the past few weeks, I've been using more and more stimulants like caffeine and having to increase the amount I take and how frequently I take them to keep me going through work. So that's obviously a bad thing. The other thing is I would feel exhausted at the end of the day and I wouldn't even want to see anyone. I would just want to lay on the couch and do nothing. And again, here and there, it's okay. Everyone wants to just laze around and watch TV sometimes. But if it's every day, that's a problem. And really looking at your history of how you view yourself and what you're doing. Now, again, all this is not black and white. It's gray because, again, you could say that your work, you should be so passionate about your work that you just get lost and maybe the hours fly by. That's one case. And maybe, again, you have to sometimes really hustle hard and just work 12 hours straight to meet a deadline, stuff like that. So it's not like there's a really hard end for this, and, everyone's going to be different. I have friends who are really happy working lots, and some friends who only want to work 1 hour a day, and that's fucking it. Like, they don't want to do anything. And it really depends on you. But some questions you can ask yourself are things like, how do I view myself, or who am I without my work? What do I really want to do? If you're a business owner, why did you start your business? Did you start your business to be working 20 hours a day, or did you start your business to, my answers were never work for anyone again, divorce time from money, the equation of I put X dollar or X time in, I get Y dollars out. I wanted to be free from that, so I don't feel like I have to be hustling at a keyboard the entire time. Stuff like that. Who am I surrounding myself with? Are they all so invested in their work they're not doing other stuff? So, questions like that, and really thinking about the end of your life. You can say, oh, yeah, I built a business, which is great, but, one of the top 5 regrets of the dying, which I'll also link in the description, is that, especially for guys, this was prevalent among men, is that I wish I hadn't worked so hard. That was one of the top 5 regrets. And I think another one was actually, I wish I'd let myself be happier. So again, just think about these things, or maybe journal about them and think about where you really want to go. And again, I don't have all the answers because, again, 1, this is all really personal, and 2, I haven't figured it out 100%. I'm still working on it. But I would just kind of, kind of push you and, pull at you just to see what you think about this, and if you're kind of getting involved in this. Are you so obsessed with productivity things that you get it and then you have all these hacks and then you just cram more work in? Or do you get that and then you're like, oh wow, I have free time now, I'm going to spend it to just relax or go learn something or go hang out with a friend, stuff like that. So again, nothing super conclusive here. It's just something that I think everyone should be aware of because I know it's affecting people. And really think about the question, why were you put on this earth and what makes you happy? Is it just grinding away more hours, or is there something else to life? Cheers.